this episode a return guest. I'm Dustin Pickering, your noble and honest host, as usual. And today's guest is Dr. Randy Overbeck, a veteran educator who has served children as a teacher and school leader for more than 3 decades. His educational experiences have included responsibilities ranging from coach and yearbook advisor to principal and superintendent, and he's lived the roles of many of the characters in his stories. As an accomplished writer, he has been published in trade journals, professional texts, and newspapers, as well as fiction, with his third published novel. As a member of the Mystery Writers of America, Dr. Overbeck is an active member of the literary community, contributing to writers' critique groups, serving as mentor to emerging writers, and participating in writing conferences such as Sleuth Fest, Killer Nashville, and the Midwest Writers Workshop. When he's not writing or researching his next exciting novel or sharing his presentation, things that go bump in the night, he's spending time with his incredible family of wife, 3 children and their spouses, and 7 wonderful grandchildren. And in addition to this, he is promoting his next and his most up-to-date novel, Scarlet at Crystal River. And I'm sure he has some exciting things to tell us that have taken place in the since last time we spoke several months back. So tell us a little bit about some of the updated news of what's been going on with your productions, your literary works.
Dustin, I appreciate that. It's great to be here. I am thrilled to share with your viewers the great news about my series, the Haunted Shores Mystery Series. The reception has been better than I ever dreamt that they might be. During this, since we've spoken last time, the first 2 books have taken off. Blood on the Chesapeake, which is entry number 1, became a Amazon and Barnes & Noble #1 bestseller this past summer. Its second companion, Crimson at Cape May, that became a bestseller on Amazon. It was actually the #2 bestseller on Amazon, outselling every other ghost story in the nation, including Stephen King and Dean Kootz's books. That was late September. So I'm really, really excited about that, which leads perfectly into the new book that you can see behind me, Scarlet at Crystal River. Scarlet at Crystal River was released early September, just a little more than not quite 2 months ago. And the reception for that has been very well as well. Like the first 2 books, the first 2 books are a cold case murder mysteries, wrapped in a ghost story, served with a side of romance, set in beautiful resort locations. Crystal River, Scarlet Crystal River matches all that. But in addition to all that, it's also a Christmas mystery taking place in Florida at Christmas time.
So that's a nice holiday gift. I mean, and once it's is it available now? Could readers or viewers buy it now, or is it still in kind of?
No, it's available. It was released by the publisher on September 13th. So it's available on all platforms in print, ebook. The audiobook is not available yet, but will be, but not in time for Christmas. It's coming, but it's not in time for Christmas.
A nice little Christmas present to scare the kiddos, get them thinking a little bit about serious issues. And so what kind of social issues do you raise in this novel? I mean, are they similar to your first 2, or do they kind of converge? Or
I try to have the social issue that I'm discussing emerge from the story and the location of what's happening. So as you recall, in Blood on the Chesapeake, the issue that my character wrestles with, even though the story takes place 20 years earlier than today, is racial injustice. That book became very popular during the uprising, and in fact, it was even being used in classrooms across the U.S. to share with kids some idea of racial injustice. The murder is actually a racially motivated murder of a teen that took place some 30 years earlier. The second book, Crimson at Cape May, which takes place in Cape May, New Jersey, which is right near the turnpike system, is about human trafficking. And if you're not familiar with that part of the country, that's one of the largest human trafficking networks in the world.
Wow.
That interstate system. So that issue grew out of that. The third book takes place in Florida, So it seemed logical that the social issue to delve into in that particular one had to do with the abuse of migrant workers.
Okay.
So the issue that we're wrestling with, and Dustin, what I was really amazed with when I did the research, I found that hardly anything has changed in 20 years regarding immigrants and migrant workers.
Okay.
The issues and the anxiety and the
Yeah.
misunderstandings that existed 20 years ago, they're the same things you hear today if you turn on TV or watch social media.
So, in your experience as an educator, would you say that as far as the racial issues, you think they're improving, or anything? Are we advancing at all and furthering equality between students with different racial backgrounds? Or is there still some stagnation going on?
I think the short answer is we are improving. Yes, what I have witnessed first as an educator, and then since I retired and I'm doing research as a writer, is that we're seeing improvements and advances in certain pockets. What I've noticed is that the young people are much more understanding, accepting of people who are different than older people. I'm not really indicting. I'm an older person, but
Right.
as a general rule, young people don't really. The issue of judging people by race is something that has become far more foreign to young people than it was to older people. So, in that sense, from an education point of view, I think yes, we are definitely improving. But as all the protests had demonstrated in 19, we've still got a huge, long way to come. There's no question about it.
Absolutely. There's still some institutional pressures that are, present, and they definitely need to be addressed. And I mean, it's really interesting to me that some of your literature has been used in classrooms to instruct students on racial injustice and the various themes you approach. Do you ever get comments back from educators about how students react?
Yes, I've gotten a few, and generally, what happens with my books, because my books are not treatises, they're not lessons, but what it does is it allows students a safe place to have those conversations. Also, what I've learned is that even though this wasn't the reason why I did this, the fact that my books are set in the past makes it actually easier to discuss the issues, because the teachers have asked questions just like what you asked. They go, okay, you read what happened in this story. Would that happen today? Is that a problem we still have today? How would people react to that today? So I think it makes it a little easier to have these rather difficult conversations. At least that's my hope, and that's part of the feedback I've gotten from some of the teachers who have used the book.
Right. I think something about art in general, you can approach topics in a way that's not invasive. You don't feel like, if I were to write a political treatise on something like this and get up on and start hammering at the pulpit about it, people may not be as receptive. But if you read it in a book, or read it or look at it in a art, people can put their own experiences into it and think about it, in more of in a deeper way. They can relate to it personally rather than having it be hammered into them, and they can feel like invited to discuss it in a conversation.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that although my work is certainly not in the same category as this, but and I know I'm dating myself, Dustin. You might not know this, but one of the best and most successful comedies on television was a comedy called MASH, which was about a medical unit in the Korean War. But what it actually was able to do is able to educate a populace about the Vietnam War that was occurring at that time by setting the same issues of war and death and tragedy in another setting, in this case in Korea. It probably did more to advance the issue of getting out of Vietnam than anything else that was going on at the time culturally. And that's what I'm hoping, although certainly not to that extent, but I'm hoping that my book is able to help contribute to. Books are able to help contribute to.
Right. I read a quote recently from Kurt Vonnegut where he said pretty much every writer and intellectual in America was against the Vietnam War, and he said, given the time scale after the war was over, he said that he thought that all their output had made the difference of, say, dropping a pie from a short 6-foot ladder or something like that, in his usual comedic way. Yeah, it seems like, I don't know. I mean, what can writers do that other types of artists, like filmmakers, like MASH can't do in their writing, that's important to still do, even though it's not necessarily a big production? We're not everyone could sit down and watch MASH, but more or less people are going to sit down and read a book in the afternoon than watch a TV show. But how can we address things in a way that's a little more maybe enlightened, or in some other way that people can think about it a different way?
Well, I think what you have to do if you're a writer, in my books, I'm working very, very hard not to preach at the reader. I'm working really hard to raise the issue to get the reader to think about this. So I don't, for example, in this third book, Scarlet and Christopher, I don't pretend to have the answer to the immigrant problem. I don't pretend to know exactly what the best thing to be would be with migrant workers, but I'm raising the issue and trying to clarify some things that people are so misinformed about. For example, this is one of the things I learned, true in 1999 and 2000, still true today. An awful lot of Americans think that these migrant workers or immigrants are looking for an easy way out, or a dole, or they want and nothing could be further from the truth.
Right.
People are coming and taking work that Americans don't want, mainly for two reasons. One, the pay is lousy, and two, it's dangerous. I didn't know this when I started to research, but the work that they do is the single most dangerous occupation in the United States.
Right.
So, I'm not telling people, well, you should be doing this, but I'm hoping by raising these issues that they will at least think about it and maybe take it a step further and investigate. In this book, I actually give 4 or 5 research resources that they can go to confirm or disconfirm what I've shared in the story. I don't know that any of them use those yet, but at least I'm giving them a direction to go.
Did you learn about how the contractors and so forth that help bring some of these immigrants over, how they basically take a big chunk of their pay? I've read that through the Reagan administration passed a reform that enables contractors to basically take a little chunk of the pay that the immigrants would get from their work, and how that's just like that's the blood money basically, it seems like. Yes. I mean, but was that something you addressed, or is it something you learned about?
I did learn about that. One of the issues that I struggled with when you're crafting a fictional story, in my case a mystery, is to make a determination as to, well, how many details of the issue that surrounds it do you want to include? And I tried to hone in on my decision making was based on 2 things. One, what is it that is plaguing what problem that we're dealing with today that was actually historically there in 1999, 2000? And 2, what is it that might have the most impact on people? So what I have Daryl discover, which basically is just a example of what I discovered in my research, is that we are all really big on eating fresh, having fresh vegetables and fresh fruit and all that kind of stuff. Well, the only way that's possible is because of this backbreaking work that all these migrants are doing.
Right.
We couldn't have these things in the store, and we certainly couldn't have them at the prices that we're paying without all the sacrifices that these people are doing. So that kind of creates some dissonance, and maybe we shouldn't be putting that. All I'm trying to do is create that dissonance in the reader going, what? Really? So I have Daryl say every time we go to the store, that in the story, his parent, the victim's parents, there's 2 victims, were involved. That they, at the time that this happened, they were strawberry pickers. And I use that as an example. I don't know if you knew this or not. Strawberry picking is the single hardest migrant worker chore that they have to do. And if you've ever had a strawberry patch of your own, even a little tiny one, you know what that's like, because you have to bend over and pick the strawberries one by one. You can't have a machine do it. Nobody, you have to check because they don't all ripen at the same time, all that kind of stuff. Well, imagine bending over, walking down rows of doing this 8 hours at a time, or 9 hours, or 10 hours. No wonder their backs give out. No. So that's what I decided to center on that, because it's a good image of what the greater problem is.
So I'm sure you probably learned a lot about the legacy of Cesar Chavez, and how is his I guess you could call it presence in his battles. Has that improved, do you think, the conditions of the workers and the migrant workers, or have things kind of lifted for them since then?
Well, Cesar Chavez, I did the research on but Cesar Chavez's work was largely in California,
right?
Although some effects, and my story centers on Florida.
Okay.
But some of the effects of his work what actually happens is, here's how I lay it out in the story. As Daryl is researching this, he, as an educator, knew about Cesar Chavez, because Cesar Chavez's work was in the late 60s and early 70s into the maybe made it in 80. I don't remember how far in the 70s it went. So as an educator, he knew about this, and his reaction was, well, that he knew about Chavez. Surely things have improved with all the work that Cesar Chavez does. And what he finds out is they have improved very little.
Wow.
The status of how they live, places where they live, the central issue, and remember, now we haven't talked about this. One of the things I did differently here is our victims are children.
Okay.
And Daryl, of course, as a teacher, is a child advocate. So everything for him is about, well, how are we helping the kids? So this central thing hasn't improved a bit. So in Cesar Chavez's time, in the time of my book, in the current time now, generally a family comes over, the mom and the father and the uncle and the aunt are all working the fields. And in some cases, the children are also working the fields. That's another separate problem. But even if they're not working the fields, they do go to school, and the schools have worked really hard to try to connect them. But the problem is that these kids, they'll work a field, the parents will work a field for 2 months, maybe. Then they'll up and move, then they'll be in Florida, and then up and move to Georgia, and then they'll work that field for 2 months or a month, then pick up, move, then they'll work in West Virginia. So the kids' education is extremely disjointed. And as you might guess, the education doesn't set very well. And then when you layer on top of that the fact that they're speaking a second language and they're having to learn English, that makes it all that much more difficult. So because my mystery is about children, I try to explain the larger issue of the problem of the greater issue through what's happening to the kids, as a way of talking about what's happening to the population in general.
So, did you ever, personally get moral lessons yourself in this research and writing the book? I mean, what is your perspective on that kind of situation, the migrant labor situation, based on your, empathizing with your characters?
Well, yes, certainly I've learned a lot for myself personally. Probably the single greatest thing is I've learned how really inaccurate the overwhelming conservative perspective of immigrants are. So if you ask an immigrant if you ask a conservative why immigrants coming here, they say something like they're coming here illegally because they want free money, they want free. And what I learned
on the dole, on the welfare,
that's exactly the opposite. They're coming here, first of all, because their situation is so horrible that they have to escape. Although I really didn't push that much into them. What drives them here is they can work, and they're working jobs that Americans don't want.
Right.
And in fact, here's the irony: when I learned, all this thing, keep the immigrants out, keep the immigrants out. The growers don't want to keep the immigrants out.
No, of course not.
When we've gone through times when there's been very tight control of immigrants, they have a horrendous time trying to bring the harvest in, and because they depend on those people coming across the border, providing that service for them and then going back.
Right.
So that's probably the biggest thing that I do personally.
Right. And I was doing some reading on, like, the whole Trump wall phenomenon. And I remember reading that his son-in-law said, somebody asked him, said, like, how could he possibly think about building a wall to keep people out? And his son-in-law told him, and it was in a private discussion, said he doesn't even plan to do that. That's just rhetoric. And, I was just looking at some of the Cato Institute's thoughts on Biden versus Trump on immigration. And they seem to think that really the policies haven't changed at all. It's still in about the same numbers are coming in, and same situations are coming through, and so that's definitely something. I think it's like there's just a lot of misguided information out there about all this whole subject. We don't. It's all politicized. It's like what I mean. I don't understand why it's so political, other than two parties want to fight over power, and this is one of their central issues.
That's right.
Yeah, that's all it is. And in the process, human beings who are struggling and trying to do their thing, and working or being misrepresented, being bashed, being hated, and being taken out of context. And a lot of people just aren't willing to do the work to understand that. I think that the good news is we have people like you writing on these subjects that humanize the whole thing. We're going to take a brief break, and we'll be right back with Dr. Randy Overbeck's work again. So enjoy the break.
The Prisoner. I can still smell you on my pillowcase, in the comforter and sheets. Thought about doing laundry, but decided to keep you with me just a little while longer. Riding giants. Each new love affair is like standing in front of a 50-foot wave. It looked doable from shore. Gifts. The son of a bitch left me broke and blacked out, with a stripper's name written in black Sharpie on my forearm, 3 bright orange traffic cones in my bedroom, and a 2-day hangover. He is the best friend ever. Wishful thinking. We kissed once. It was on the corner of Rampart Street in St. Peter in New Orleans. I wish I could say it was that magic movie moment with the perfect song, perfect setup, lighting just right, and bright orange moon overhead. Anticipation giving way to action like the final scene in 16 Candles, when the 2 main characters are kissing on a table, birthday cake shining with lit candles in between, and nothing left to wish for. And when the credits rolled, everyone was already halfway home, satisfied and happy with what the stars brought to them. But our kiss wasn't like that. It was sloppy. We were drunk. The music sucked. There was spilled beer and strangers crowding our space. We could not really call it romantic. We could only admit that it happened once. There have been no second chances. I have had 1,000 more moments between that kiss and today. Some amazing, others incredible, fulfilling and fun, but all have put me here, back here, alone, staring at the stars, with only one wish left.
Corner, brought to you by New York Parrot TV, the voice for humanity. Hi, welcome back to Parrot Literary Corner. Dustin Pickering here, talking with Dr. Randy Overbeck about his latest book, Scarlet at Crystal River. Yeah, the misrepresentation through politics. Gosh, it's like a filter that just pulls out all the truth and gives you a steaming pile of crap. It's like, I mean, and this business of I love my conservative friends. They're great people, but all this business about Biden and open borders and imposing socialism on the whole world and all that, that's called conspiracy.
And I don't know if you read that very recently. They said that we had the largest number of illegal immigrants arrested under Biden in this last
under Obama too, previously. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, it's a lot of crap, all the stuff we see and we hear, the way it's represented, and then when you look at the actual statistics and data, it seems like it's very counteractive to what we think and what we're being told. It's actually the opposite of the truth in a lot of ways, and the politics really just like flips things on its head and tells you all these lies. And you have conservatives. Sometimes, I feel like that as far as their policies are actually concerned, like Reagan did the amnesty bill and stuff. They seem to be friendly sometimes to immigrants, but then the rhetoric comes out and they're just like attack dogs,
It's gotten way off on the right. And what I tried to do in my book was to kind of give people an insight by showing it through these kids that had become victims.
Yeah.
As Daryl was discovering what their lives were like, and then tracing back what actually happened to them to find out, to unravel the mystery, to put a human face. It's easy to dismiss these people when you don't know what their situation is, you don't know what their experiences are. It's a lot harder if you can put a human face on that and go, well, what would you do if you were in this shoes? If you were the immigrant, what would you do? How far would you go to feed your children? What if you don't have any food at home?
Right.
Cross the border and go work for a dime an hour to be able to do these things. I'm hoping that might where all the political rhetoric in the world won't get to anybody. I'm hoping, again, my only wish is it'll make them think. That's my point.
And realize some of the reality of the matter and empathize with those who are in those situations. I wondered if you'd like to read a passage from the book.
Oh, I wasn't prepared to do that, but I'll be happy to do that. Now,
okay.
What I found was, when I did my research, was that almost always, whether you're on the right or the left, they've always oversimplified what the issue is.
Well, I think people want the easy answer, and the politicians that want power know if we tell you just a little tidbit and put a spin on it, then maybe the people will respond to it and think, they're like sheep, there's that, metaphor that everyone likes to use and how easily gullible we are. But a lot of times I see people that say those, use that metaphor are probably the worst sheep we can imagine, and they're just projecting. Everything has been simplified, and it's all the political spin. It's not about, if you get the truth of the matter, you got to dig, you got to really look into what's going on and some of the tough questions that are being posed. And the more you look into it, the more questions you wind up with. But if you're ready to read a passage, I would love to.
I am
Absolutely.
In spite of our discussion about the serious issue that we are facing with this, I want to kind of remind our viewers, the book is first and foremost a mystery and a suspense novel,
right?
And it involves some really dramatic things that occur to some of the characters. So in the passage the passage I'm reading is almost in the middle of the book. And in this passage, Daryl, his new wife Erin, we should have started with that because they're actually on their honeymoon. It gets interrupted by this ghost hunting trip, and a friend that they have made, Luis, who they have asked to join them to help with the translation, because neither Daryl nor Erin speak very much Spanish at all. And they just finished visiting a place where they live, a place where the migrants live. And they are, Daryl is shocked to see what that situation is. Anyway, so they just finished that, and they're on their way back, which is where we're going to pick up the story.
Okay.
Let's see. Luis is asking a question. Let's see. Luis says, I not know how to say this. Luis lowered his gaze and gave a slight shake of his head. I think you know something about these kids, more than you say. Because Daryl has to this point not told him that these kids are ghosts. Still hovering in the middle of the seat, Erin glanced over at Daryl. Daryl caught the look on her face and started, like I said back there, it's complicated. We Aaron's side window exploded. The fractured glass shot slivers across the front seat. The sound of an explosion followed a beat behind. Aaron screamed. Something stung Daryl's right arm. He reached to grab it. He saw a cut open on his skin and then looked across the seat. Damn, Aaron's arm was bleeding bad. He couldn't breathe. Aaron, he got out. He stared at her for a second and jerked his gaze back to the road and straightened the car. Something hit the rear window. Luis yelped. The glass shattered, and a second later, another crack followed. Luis fell forward. Was he hit? Daryl's gaze jumped from the road to Aaron to the back seat. Luis had fallen to the floor. Daryl couldn't see him. Luis, Aaron called. No answer. Dragging his eyes from the road, Daryl shot another glance at Aaron. Her entire arm was now turning red, the edge of her short sleeve wicking up the scarlet. The fingers on her left hand gripped tightly around her right arm, the knuckles turning white. The blood still seeped through. Shit. Aaron, are you? He cried. I'll be all right, I think. She managed between gritted teeth. What about Luis? Dragging his eyes from Aaron for a second, he turned in the seat to try to look into the back. He screamed, Luis! Daryl wrenched farther around to look, and his leg bumped the steering wheel. He heard an ugly thump. Too late, he jerked back to see the car careen over the berm. In 3 seconds, it slammed into a tree. He heard another explosion and was slammed back against the seat. Everything went dark.
Captivating. Do you have any idea? I mean, is this like I noticed that you use the ghost stories and the mysteries, and you raise a lot of major critical issues in American history and in societal and functioning and stuff. Why do you think you resort to mysteries and ghost stories for that purpose?
Well, I've always been a fan for years, for decades, of mysteries and thrillers. Mm-hmm. So when I decided I wanted to go that direction of trying my hand in fiction, I most often writers write what they love to read. So I kind of went in that direction. The ghost part is a little more interesting. The ghost part, when I first envisioned these stories, I didn't have in mind a ghost story. I was intrigued by a session I went to. You mentioned in your intro that one of the writing workshops I go to pre-pandemic was Midwest Writers Workshop. And then when I was at that workshop, now this is probably 8 years ago, I was lucky enough to go to a session put on by a group of ghost hunters. I was a skeptic at that point. Mm-hmm. I was absolutely fascinated by what I learned from them about the documented scientific evidence they have of ghosts and how they have collected that information over time. And then I started reading a lot of ghost stories. I hadn't up until that point. And I decided I wanted to do something that didn't exist, at least at that point in the fiction world then. So almost all ghost stories, Dustin, are one of two types. They're either A, the scare your pants off, be terrifying, and keep you up in the middle of the night like Stephen King and Dean Koontz and Shirley Jackson. Mm-hmm. Which is good, and I like those. I'm not complaining. Or they are what I call Casper the Friendly Ghost, which is it's the ghost of my grandmother who used to own this yarn store. She comes and visits me, and when there's a murder, she tells me who did it. Which is cozy. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, the reason that what I wanted to do different is neither one of those have much of anything to do with what they've documented about how ghosts really interact with the living. So everything in my books, although I have taken some literary liberty, but almost everything in my book about how ghosts interact with human beings is what has been documented by ghost hunters around the United States.
Wow.
I'm trying to keep that part of the story as realistic as possible and still make it interesting and plausible and all that kind of stuff.
So what kind of plot devices and literary influences go into your books?
Well, I am what's called, I'm kind of halfway between a plotter and a pantser. I'm sure other writers have discussed that on this show, but as a way of remembering, a plotter is someone who plots out the entire story, lays it out maybe on a storyboard, or there are all kinds of different ones. so that they actually start at the beginning and work all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
A pantser is somebody who doesn't do any of that, just simply sits down and starts writing and then sees what happened as they do that. I'm kind of halfway in the middle of that.
Mm-hmm.
I usually start my story initially with a couple of general ideas of, I think I want to go in this fashion, and then start just on a burst of writing. And then when I'm about maybe a third of the way through the story, I will then actually start plotting out. But I always keep part of one of my treats. One of the things that I try to do is you may be surprised to find this, I don't decide who the ultimate bad guy is until very close to the end. So in each of my stories, as you get, 2/3, halfway through, you're going, well, the murderer could be A, or it could be B, or it could be C, it could be D. Who's the murderer?
Mm-hmm.
I purposely don't know who the murderer is until I get to about 75 or 80% of the story done.
Wow.
I make sure that each of those characters could have been the murderer. They each have a motive. They each have an opportunity. But I'm trying to keep myself in suspense so that as I'm laying the story out, that it ends up fitting neatly and going, oh, well, of course it was him or her or whoever it was.
I had one more question, and then we'll go into capping it off.
Right.
So you've done really well on the sales of the book. How are you promoting it? I mean, especially this pandemic. What is drawing attention to it that maybe some of our authors out there who have are trying to struggle to get their book in the market so that they can maybe learn from?
It is a very challenging task. I'll be honest, Dustin, when I first got down this road, I didn't have any idea how difficult it would be to try to get the word out about the novel. I don't know if your readers know this, but there are 300,000 new titles that will be released in fiction in the U.S. alone this year. One every minute or so, every couple of minutes. If you almost all your readers or many of your viewers are on Kindle, Kindle has 6 million titles. So to try to get a Kindle user to pay attention to my book is next to impossible. I do a lot of social media. I'm very active in trying to get word out through avenues like your great show here. And I've been very fortunate. This is about my 6th or 7th interview that I've been able to do for the new book. I do a lot of guest blogging on that. I do invest some in some promotional packages. Some work out real well, others not quite so well. I was very fortunate. Both of my books have been picked up by BookBub as deal of the day. So that has definitely moved the needle in those categories. I've understood from my publisher that Blood on the Chesapeake has also been picked up for a Kindle deal of the day sometime coming up in the next month. So all of those things help. I try not to obsess about that. Because if you did, you'd just die. You would right. And I will tell you that since the pandemic has let up, I've done a great deal of one-on-one promotions. I've just finished my 16th one. We spent a week over at Cape May in that area promoting the book. Spent a week on the Chesapeake Shore, and I've been all over. I live in Ohio. I've been all over my area. In fact, I've actually done, you mentioned things still go bump in the night at the beginning. I've actually done that presentation in about 6 states already. So, and each time I go, they are always interested in my book. I'm very fortunate. They're excited to be buying autographed copies of my book. That has helped and sustained me. And I'm looking to expand that as the pandemic continues to decline.
Right. That's interesting. It's great to hear that people are curious about your work, and especially some of the human dimensions of it. And it sounds like a really entertaining and interesting stories that you write. What would your final message to our viewers be?
My message would be, please don't just buy James Patterson. Although I like him, John Grisham, I love him. Stephanie Ivanovich, I like her. Find an emerging writer, whether it's me or another one. Show them a little love and check their books out. Amazon is very good about giving you 10-page or 8-page or 20-page look into anybody's book. You'll know what you're getting before you buy it. But check it out, and then support your local authors or your small authors, and give them a chance to grow.
Would you like to say thank you to any friends or family or particular supporters who've been really backbone for you?
Yeah, I would. I didn't get a chance to talk about this, but I'm very, very fortunate to have two groups of individuals who really helped me with my work. I have a group of about a dozen beta readers who read my work prior to publishing. They read it actually as it's being written and give me feedback. They have been invaluable. And then I have a group of about 6 people that belong to the writers group that I belong with that really help me. They keep me honest and make sure that the work that I have is the very best that I can do.
Mm-hmm.
I would not be here talking with you. These books would not be published. They certainly wouldn't be near as good, near as popular as they are without the help of those two groups. And I'm very grateful for their contributions on my writing journey.
Excellent. Well, thanks for talking with us, Dr. Overbeck. Fascinating conversation and all. I love the mix and the blend of the political and social dimensions with the entertaining stories about ghosts and how these mysteries and how they unravel and what that can say about society in general. How you can use that as a sort of vehicle to learn more about human causes and things like that. So thanks for joining us on the program today. So you guys out there, you guys can support us with donations. If you guys are interested, it's paypal.me/nyparrot. You guys, out there, if you got a little extra money, if you want to buy Dr. Overbeck's book, please do. And, tell them that we sent you. That won't help you much, but whatever, it's good to support other authors. Also, if you want to support us without monetary, compensations, you can be on the program yourself. Or you can send out some feelers and get us some guests. The email to reach me, Dustin Pickering, is literarycorner@newyorkparrot.com. That email is my email with the company, and you guys can just suggest to me any particular writers you think would be interested in being on the program, or you can join yourself if you're shy or if your concerns are that you don't have much to say. I'll tease it out of you. I promise. I'll find something we can talk about. I'm really good at that. So, we got the anthology coming up, series 2 of the Literary Parrot. So if you guys got series 1 and you took a look at that and you supported us through buying that book, we were grateful, abundantly grateful for your assistance. We hope you love the book. Want to review it on Amazon for us, give us a little 5-star review or whatever. Just be honest with us, tell the Amazon what you think, and that'll support us as well. And series 2 will be coming out on December 1st. That's not as far away as you think. We'll be eating Thanksgiving dinner and typing out on the computer this book and putting it together. So we'll be nonstop working while you guys are out enjoying your food and your family time. Hopefully the pandemic isn't, going to strangle us this time around. So you guys out there writing, keep writing. Don't stop, just keep putting your thoughts on paper. I also would like to advise any writers on writing on a subject, do some research on it. A lot of times the truth is not what you're being told on the surface level of things, as we discussed in this program today. Just do some reading on your subject matter. It helps you grow. It makes you think. The more you dig into something, the more questions you'll have, and it's actually very enjoyable experience sometimes to learn that what we think we know is not what we actually was the truth of the matter. And so you learn to kind of question yourself and think critically, as they say. So, guys, subscribe to our channel. Hit that button, that red button on YouTube. Blink, blank, blink. There you are. And you're a subscriber. You'll be updated on our content. Share our content. Like, love, and share, as Facebook says, with your fellow Facebook friends and audiences. Whoever out there is viewing today, thank you so much for viewing. And just hopefully you'll, have an interesting perspective after watching this program. So thank you very much to everybody out there who's been a support so far. We are past our 200th episode. So thank you, and keep out the good work going and keep moving. You guys are excellent audience.
Listen to the people. Listen to humanity. Listen to the Parrot. Parrot TV. Listen to the parrot.